of the text that has the Tibetan and then the English stanza. So it'll be a lot easier for us to all use that, and then we can put it up on the screen so that everybody will have that text. I haven't had a chance to really get into it. I'll have to print it out for Rinpoche in order to use it and so forth. But I just wanted to let everybody know that Lobsang received that text in a PDF file and then forwarded it to me. And it will make things a lot easier because I'm using one version. Rinpoche is using another version because the print's bigger. It's easier for him to read, but it's really a shoddy kind of copy of it. So we'll be able to blow up this new PDF and make the Tibetan really big. So it'll be 10 stanzas at a time, really easy to get through, and we won't have any confusion. So just wanted to let everybody know that we're all going to have the same text soon, and we'll be able to hopefully put it up on the screen, or at least everybody who is interested can say they're interested, and we can just get that PDF to you. That way you can see Rinpoche the whole time on the screen. I'm always kind of split on what to do with that, because when you take the text and put it on the screen, then the teacher's not on the screen. So I don't know, there's probably 6 solutions for that I don't know about, but let's get started with the Heart Sutra. The Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Thus have I heard, once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha of monks and a great gathering of the Sangha of Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the Samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination, and at the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajnaparamita, saw in this way. He saw the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita? Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita should see in this way, seeing the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness, emptiness also is form. Emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics. There is no birth and no cessation. There is no impurity and no purity. There is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no eye, dhatu, no mind, dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind consciousness, dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance, up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the Bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the 3 times by means of Prajnaparamita fully awaken to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering should be known as truth, since there is no deception. The Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way: Teata om gate gate paragate parasangate bodhisoha. Thus, Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family, thus it is, O son of noble family, thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Gala jube nejo dambane ngushe du chunga yi du do jen rupa bolama yi bushinzi nizong anro zolo shatse lo waga zamara de donro. Agasamara de Chenrezig Vediada Ongade Gade Baragade Barazanga Badizo Baba Ganjani Gai de Medoje Obadoji Mebodoji Shewadoji Dragi Baji Medum Bejanji Jedingayezo Girin Danya Jewada Medon Bejan Bewada Samba Jonjin Bonzon Zonjoji Dachi Dejan Denda Delejo. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready, a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this jewel mandala to you, precious Guru. Idam Guru Rana Mandala Kamira Dayami. Zanye Janam Daji Janam Rajanju Badu Dani Jasuji Dagi Chinye Jipe Nanji Jala Benji Zanye Jubaju Zanye Janam Daji Janam Ra Janju Badu Dani Jasuji Dagi Chinye Jipe Nanji Jala Benji Zanye Jubaju Zanye Janam Daji Janam La Janju Badu Dani Jasuji Dagi Chinye Jipe Zananji Jala Benji Zanye Jubaju. May Tara bless our minds to be able to understand clearly the Madhyamika Prasangika view. That's cool. Okay, so we left off, we finished stanza 149 in the 6th chapter last week. So we'll start at 150 this week. It'll be so much easier once we have the stanzas from my side as well. The cheers, the good so.
대신간지 때도 때는 뭐 보면 내가 좀 말씀이지래. 뭐 보면 홀이 예미 공비 몸에 공부를 예미 공비 오요 말에 공부 때문에 때문에 그마사 공부를 때는 줘버려. 맞는 줘봐요 말이지. 그것도 손대잖아요. 그 때문에 때문에 그것도 공부도 내봐도요. 내봐주고 말이지. 내는 공부 나한테 줘봐줘로 공부를 때네 야구를 손대서.
Bless you. So that's good.
신다로에
Okay.
la leyenda 신다로에 la leyenda 예미 많이 되네 암비 야메시 열라 라미 열라 다들미 디바tam이 이 미치지노스 다다 뭐 내가 말로 이 이제 내가 말로 어디서 되지 그래서 초도 시다 주나나 세븐날 시다 요요스 신디열라 초정라 신다장 지금 말했어 신다 바시네 로로지자지면 신다 이거 타는거지 세븐날 신다 요요로 가시열라 재미 열라 다 maybe 이상 신다지 마이스 이데 신다 마레스
Ithaca.
수요일날 화요일로 지시다 돌아온 대진호
Chicago. Kaba. Okay, to check.
지시다 돌아온 대진호 시와주버다 라 치다를 대다양의 신다 요마이 대다 게데 신다니 예린다를 홀수라 이타 대요나 내주나 대야요미데 디셔 이서 신다 요마이 신다 이데 신다 말스네 과시 최제 초바장 매베 이데라 수제 마이나 과시 지양 마이 되되네 네네 이수 다시 지단조 최지 되네 지단 되다 되다 내가 줄에 대신에 재미나봐만에
Jeppy Nampa. That's good.
재미나봐만에 라지제 타지장은 저와 시바지스 타지장은 저와 시바지 내는 조수 그래서 내놓라 오늘 시장 리버 마이니 저와 매베 조수 张月米提西洋的一美里现在个一点现在一样的这个嘛这个嘛是等等等于中今天都那么对接容易明白这是等于这可能你的主播当他念多他念多今天都那么对接他对的自己呢现在这个嘛是对接容就是明白这那就没把今天你人的让给人了真的都马大马去吧都被大厂的家伙是电人都把因电人都把因这些原来见的拆卸前现在人写不写出天就弄了200年多路今天准备工作马拉基呀
Okay, so those are the 10 stanzas. Rinpoche gave, let me just go through those quickly. Okay, so here we start the section of the middle way, entrance to the middle way, where we get into nominal, the designation, and showing how things are not truly established, they're merely imputed, designated in dependence upon a collection. And they are not other than, they are not arisen from self, other, a combination of both or neither. So it says, thus the basis for our clinging to an I is not a thing, and though not other than the aggregates, the self is not the aggregates themselves. It does not own the aggregates are not contained by it, yet in dependence on the aggregates, the self does arise. So it shows how independence, the I, the self, is not truly established because it dependently originates. It dependently originates in, through a collection. So we have this dependence of the aggregates coming together and then a designation of an I. But there is no I that exists separately, that's singular, that can be, that is truly established, that can be found. So thus the basis for our clinging to an I is not a thing. And though not other than the aggregates, the self is not the aggregates themselves. It does not own the aggregates are not contained by it, yet in dependence upon the aggregates does the self arise. So form, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness, these aggregates form a collection. And then if we look at Jeff sitting here, so in dependence upon this collection of parts that come together, there's Jeff that's named and suitably designated as Jeff. We can't say that Jeff is his hand, Jeff is his head, Jeff is his legs. We can't say that Jeff is something other than those things, because we know that in dependence upon that collection of this body that's living, we name Jeff, that Jeff was born and then named based on some aggregates and parts, and in dependence upon name a parents gave, Jeff came into being. So Jeff is present while those aggregates are present that are suitable to be named as Jeff. But once the aggregates die, or if you will, once the life force is separated, and then Jeff is no longer, because there are aggregates that will then be named as something else. So anyway, so that's the deep dive on that. We cannot claim a chariot is other than its parts, nor that it is their owner, nor identical with them. So when we look at the chariot, and we look at the 7-point analysis of the chariot, one of Chandrakirti's main analyses, we see that we cannot find this chariot within its parts. So when we say, is Jeff the eye, the head, the hand, etc., we don't find that Jeff is the hand. We don't find that the chariot, when we name a chariot, we don't say that the wheel is the chariot. We don't say that the harness is the chariot, or the seat is the chariot, or the spokes are the chariot. Thank you. Thank you so much. The Rinpoche Jabu, he has EST. So here, this is just affirming that we cannot claim a chariot is other than its parts. So if the parts of a chariot aren't there, can we name that there's a chariot there? So if there's nothing there, we need the parts in order to name it there. But we can't say that the parts of the chariot. So it starts to analyze it like that. And then you get to the point where you can't find it, and you have to establish that it comes into being through dependent origination, and then it's nominally through imputation. So we have dependent origination and then imputation, and the imputation is dependent origination as well. Nor identical with them, nor that it is their owner, nor identical with them. It is not in its parts are not contained in it. So when you try to establish a chariot without the parts at all, it becomes very hard to do so. You can't say that, oh, it just owns those parts, because the chariot depends upon those parts to come into existence. We're establishing that. So we can't say the chariot is its parts. We can't say that the chariot's something other than its parts, because it requires its parts. We can't say that the chariot just owns these parts, because then you'd have to establish the chariot separate from the parts. And how would you find that chariot? Its parts are not contained in it. So then we look at the reversal. Is it something that's a combination where we have the parts contained within it, and then this establishes that a true self? But then you've already negated this idea that these parts, so you've already negated this idea that the self's in the parts, because there have to be multiple selves. And then if all those parts are contained within it, then which parts make it so that the self can abide? Can you remove any of those parts and the self is still there? Because I can remove my hand and I'm still here. So you start to find out that you cannot make sense of it unless you say that there is a dependent origination and a nominal designation, and that these things exist because of dependent origination, and that all of these things have the potential to be what they can be because of emptiness, because they are not truly established. Various parts of wood and rubber and metal can make a chariot, because those parts are not truly established. They come into being through dependent origination, and that chariot does as well through those collections of separate things. Rubber and metal are not the same. So we would have to say that then is a chariot without metal a chariot? So it just starts to ask these questions. I don't begin to claim to be a Prasangika scholar. So I'm just asking the questions that I've heard asked that we can ask ourselves, and we can look at the text, and then we can look at more texts, and then we can look at more texts, and then really frame questions that have some relevance to Rinpoche with a basis of some kind of philosophy that he can kind of understand and give the correct philosophical answer to. So anyway, let me move on here. 1 second. It's not the mere collection of the parts, nor yet their shape. So Rinpoche at that point said, you can't find that the shape is the chariot. So the shape itself is not truly established. The shape itself dependently originates. So now if the chariot consisted of the mere collection of its parts, the scattered fragments likewise would comprise the chariot. But there is no owner of the parts. There are no parts, and neither can the shape or simple pattern constitute them. So it's negating the idea that the metal itself is truly established, or that the rubber itself is truly established, or that the wood itself is truly established, or my hand, or my consciousness, or my eye consciousness, or my sense powers. It's showing that these things are not truly established. So you can't say that them coming collected together somehow makes true establishment, because they separately are not truly established. And so the shape itself comes into being through a collection, and itself is not truly established. So then it can't make something that's truly established, because what makes it's not truly established. It all dependently originates. Now, I'm just going to read now. Now, if the chariot consisted of the mere collection of its parts, the scattered fragments likewise would comprise the chariot. But if there is no owner of the parts, there are no parts, and neither can the shape or simple pattern constitute it. If the shape you mean is what was earlier in the parts, supposedly remaining there when now the chariot is perceived, how is it that there is no chariot when the parts are dissembled? And even now there is no chariot present. If within the chariot that's here and now assembled, the wheels and so forth have assumed a different shape, this fact would be perceived, but it is not. Therefore, the shape alone is not the chariot. Collections, you may say, are not real things, but if the chariot shape is not the shape of the gathered parts, how can there be a shape of something utterly unreal? In accordance with your doctrine, you should know that on the basis of an unreal cause, results of equal unreality arise, and so it is with all that comes to be. So it's saying that things exist; they just exist through dependent origination, and they are not truly existent. But a not truly existent cause gives rise to a not truly existent result, and that not truly existent cause exists, and that not truly existent result exists. It just doesn't truly, inherently exist. When we say it doesn't truly exist, we mean it doesn't exist from its own side. It doesn't have this singularity that can be found when we try to isolate it as what we designate it as. All we can find is a collection that serves as a suitable basis of designation. And if we have valid cognition based on what we are perceiving and we name it, then it's suitable to exist in the world conventionally as this thing that we named it. So a car. So if we don't have anything wrong, with our perception, so we don't have anything wrong with our eye consciousness and in our minds, and we see this collection of parts we put together and designate it as car, there is a car that exists there, because you can drive it down the street, and there's a person that exists there that can get in the car and drive in the car down the street. But there's not an inherently existent person or an inherently existent car or inherently existent driving, because it requires the car and the person for driving to exist. And we've already established that the car itself is a mere collection designated as a car, and that the person driving the car is merely a collection that is designated as a person driving a car. And then driving requires those things and requires the road as well to drive on, unless you're doing some simulation. And then we could maybe debate that. But if that's driving, it's driving, I guess. It's just not driving on a road. So these are the things that Nagarjuna questioned, and that made it so that the Madhyamika Prasangika view was flawless, because all these questions were asked and answered, and the philosophy was formed that presented the only realistic view on how things can abide. There's no other view that can be presented or has been presented that negates the Prasangika view, and that presents an alternative way that would even match up to and give the Prasangika view ultimately a hard time. So now, again, I am not a scholar of the Prasangika view. I've been lucky to dive right into that. And I'm sure if I read through a tenet that wasn't the Prasangika view, I would think it was the Prasangika view. And that's the trouble in deep diving into something and not being a scholar. Misinterpretation is very easy. So that's why in our tradition, the emphasis is so much on study and understanding and intellectual understanding, because if you don't know what you're looking for, you might find something that's wrong and not know it's wrong. So our tradition says you really have to analyze this stuff and rip it apart and know what you're looking at and know what the view is really, not just what, things are not truly established because they dependently originate. We can all say that really easily, but the implications of that are great. And what that means to the way we interact with the world, the implications are great. And how we interact even, with ourselves when we're alone. If we have this understanding of this grasping at true establishment guides all of our wrong decisions, then it makes our even alone time a totally different experience. So anyway, collections, you may say, are not real things, but if the chariot shape is not the shape of the gathered parts, how can there be a shape of something utterly unreal? In accordance with your doctrine, you should know that on the basis of an unreal cause, results of equal unreality arise, and so is it with all that comes to be. Therefore, in respect of form and all the rest, it's wrong to claim that one identifies a thing in it. For forms and so forth, since there is no birth, have no existence. Therefore, so here it's negating, the arisal. The birth is not truly established because it dependently originates. Any arisal of anything dependently originates. If a car comes into being or a baby comes into a being, a mosquito comes into a being. Even Padmasambhava, who was born on a lotus, dependently originated from that lotus that he was born from. Therefore, in respect of form and all the rest, I think it was a different flower. It's Upali flower, maybe, an Upali flower. It's a different flower, but Padmasambhava was born from a flower. But that birth dependently originates, whether it's from heat and moisture, from an egg, birth from a womb, or miraculous birth, it all dependently originates, so it's not truly established. Thus, therefore, in respect of all form and all the rest, it's wrong to claim that one identifies a thing in it, for forms and so forth, since there is no birth, have no existence. Things, therefore, do not subsist in shapes. Thus, this sevenfold reasoning reveals in ultimate or worldly terms that nothing is established but if phenomena are left as found, unanalyzed, they are indeed imputed independence on their parts. Let's do that again. Thus, this sevenfold reasoning reveals in ultimate or worldly terms that nothing is established. But if phenomena are left as found, unanalyzed, they are indeed imputed independence on their parts. A thing made up of parts themselves, comprising parts, a chariot is regarded as a working entity for living beings, thus it is a means of transport. Do not undermine conventions that the world accepts. So here it's saying this doesn't exist, that doesn't exist, that doesn't exist, but you can drive a chariot, it goes down the road, so don't undermine the conventions because you can get in that thing and it works. So you can't misuse this Madhyamika Prasangika view and end up at nihilism, because you have to end up at it works because it dependently originates. It's a chariot, it dependently originates. It's not truly established because it dependently originates. It exists, but it doesn't truly exist. So that's where we'll end. Yeah. Vi, I will do. The pombo la dene. The mota, the shin yomare, the jack yomare, jeek yomare, corlo yomare, yene corlo dan jat dan jeet dan shin mena, the mota yomare, the la dene, the lasso. Okay. Any questions? So I want to thank Ted. I was just kind of disheveled in the beginning, trying to figure out what was going on. Ted came over and tried to get our internet going. We bought a solution. It didn't work, and it also actually screwed our whole network up. And it made Rinpoche's SIM card say it wasn't working in his phone. I don't know if it's related, but it's all connected to the same timing. So we unplugged these pods, and then we ordered something else that probably wasn't even going to be a good solution. And Ted came over and made another solution. So hopefully, I don't know how class went. I don't know if it's the solution yet, but it seems to be better than it was from my side. So I just want to say thank you, Ted, for coming over and spending the time that you did. You were here, quite some time, and then it was a nice visit. Ted's family is from Lori's parents were here, and they're apparently lineage-wise from this like villages next to each other. Like families would know each other. They lived in such close villages in Greece. So it was kind of interesting that they all got to visit and talk Greece stuff. And Ted's brother Jim just got back from Greece. So it was, yeah, it was really a nice visit, and we got some technology out of it. So it's a win-win. So yeah, let's, and we also talked about everybody, we want to get together for teachings again, of course. And it was so nice that we had the Waitara initiation, but now we have this Delta variant that we absolutely have to, medical professionals are saying that we have to act differently again, almost like go back to the, no one's saying it out loud because everyone's terrified to say it out loud, but with an immune compromised person, if the vaccine is still going to get you a little sick, if you get in contact with this Delta variant, and it's so rampant right now, we just have to be super careful about how we think about what we're going to do getting together. So I just wanted to put that out there before I forgot about it, because it's something that we talked about. I was acting in the world, no, I didn't go with friends or anything, but I go to the supermarket without a mask. You know, I was definitely a lot more comfortable than I guess I should have been with the new variant out. So we'll all have to consider that as a community. But I want to let you know that, you know, it wasn't just like, oh, we had a class, everybody feel better now. It's not how it was. We want to do that. We want to go and have these teachings at the center, as long as Rinpoche's health is good enough, and that, you know, we can do it safely. So the internet and that, yeah, those are two things I wanted to just mention today. And also that Rinpoche's been able to, through WhatsApp, talk with like his peers in Goa Kamsen. He spoke with the oldest living member of Goa Kamsen on FaceTime in India. He's 92. His attendant was there, and they were talking about, Rinpoche was really that morning just joking away. And the monk was so happy to see him, he started crying. Both of them that he's talked with started crying. And Rinpoche said they didn't get us because they escaped together from Tibet. So they were like, yeah, they were all over us, but they didn't get us. And Rinpoche was laughing, like telling an old story, you know. And think about the hair, like how that raises my hair, like to think of what that experience was like, and how that was. And I could tell that the Geshe Demba was not thinking it was as, Rinpoche kind of laughs at funny things. He likes slapstick. So like, you know, that's maybe more funny to him than others. But yeah, he was bragging it up about how they got out of there, and naming all the people that got out, and naming that they died of old age instead of that. And, you know, Rinpoche's among only a few people who are left. I think there's only maybe one that was on the trip with him, or two that were on the trip with him in his Kamsen. And in terms of, if we look at Drepung Losaling, elders that are left, you know, there aren't any elders that were the abbots of any of the major monasteries from Drepung. There aren't any of there aren't any of the elders left that held the position of Ganden Tripa, the head of the Gelugpa lineage, or that held the Namgyal Kempo. And those are the two high statuses in the tradition. So when we look at that and we think about what that means, you know, Rinpoche could care less, but that makes him probably the most famous Drepung living elder in terms of what he accomplished in his lifetime, and in terms of his Lharampa #1 degree and so forth. So anyway, just bragging up a little bit. And we have brick tea now, so butter tea. Lobsang La knows about that. We had it at the party. It's got some sort of high octane ingredients in it, maybe. Any questions?
Stasha has a question.
Stasha, we'll do it.
Good morning. Thank you for the teaching, Jeff, translating, and everyone for making it possible. My question is, at what point does the self arise? if it's dependent on the aggregates as coming together as a collection to exist, but when the zygote is formed, the other aggregates aren't present. So at what point does the self arise?
Da gadu jegadu. Da zin da gadu jegadu. The goma dan core. Nyamdu da yongdu the gare. Bardo da yirbe. Bardo da dan jewa da chipa. Da chipa. So if we then Rinpoche, the jewa ngama jewa shema da drogudu nga dan da dunchi. Okay, so it's the self that is beginningless and goes from life to life. So when we look at what we answer, what moves forward, the I is what moves from lifetime to lifetime, but it's not Jeff. So we have to be careful when we say this word self or I. It's this continuum, but the I that I'm experiencing now as Jeff isn't the same I that is experienced in the bardo as whatever Jeff is next life is, or the I that is experienced in terms of what it's named to. So it's depending on like how you're defining that I, if it's the I of Stasha or the I of Jeff, or if it's the I that moves as a continuum from lifetime to lifetime. So then Rinpoche, then Bardo, Gadu Kagadu, Pame Kor. Bardo Gadu, the Satsam. Bardo dan Jewa, Satsam Gare. The Bardo Gadu Ka. Then Bardo the Shena. Okay, so I asked him, when does the intermediate state being, I asked what the line is between the intermediate state being and the next life. And he says the intermediate state being passes when the next life being is born. So this ends, 1 moment, 2 moments, 3 moments, 4th moment is a birth. And in this tradition, the birth is the union of the sperm and egg. So when this union of the sperm and egg occur, and the consciousness, the bardo being passes, and then the consciousness goes into that sperm and egg union, that would be when Jeff, but Jeff's not named yet. So that's really debatable. Lobsang La. Are you there? You want to hop in? Hop in.
Okay. So
Why not?
yeah. So right. So Rinpoche was saying that the bardo being dies and then takes another life and then takes birth. And so, right. So then I think Stasha, your question was what part of the question about the, when the sperm and egg meet and there's a zygote that's formed, then the aggregates aren't there. That was part of what you were thinking. So maybe we could ask that to Rinpoche directly. So like when the sperm and egg meet, then where are the rest of the aggregates or something? Maybe see what because I guess from what we were just saying, that the idea would be that there are all 5 aggregates there at that point, but maybe just to clear that up.
No, exactly. I was thinking if the sperm and egg join together, that at that point, the baby doesn't have the sense of smell. It doesn't have the other sense powers.
So like where are the Wangbo? Right.
Correct. So at that point, it's just
question.
the red and white substance, but there's no There's not the other things.
Then
So
we should ask that one directly. So I guess right when the kuchak tete dusudi wango nga gawa is like say
Pame kucha. Then Yamdu Chana, the Sheba Ire. Then the Wombo, then the Kanga. Me Wombo, Naya Wombo, the Kanga Kabo Yare.
바두도 어부 근성에 어부 마성을 들려 말해서 어부 근성 투매 줬어. 이걸 손으로.
So in the intermediate state, the sense powers are all present. The intermediate state could not be produced without the powers. That's what Rinpoche said from the Basu Bandhu's Abhidharma Kosha, correct? Do you know that lung? But he's saying that they're within the intermediate state, the sense powers are present. Then a pami kudra, nyandu shana, then sheba yuna, the wombo nga yirbe.
어디 바두 가서 어부가가 요사래.
Then a jewa, keji tambo jewa, jetse len, jewa lena, keji tambo, the wombo kanga yirbe.
어부 갈래 좋으면 와.
And kabane.
지시 닥케지 담보 저래는 그러.
The jewa, right? So the keji jewa lena, keji tambo, the wombo, yuna mena. Jewa keji tambo nipa, so
어부 요지래.
keji tambo,
이 좋은 거 싫어.
yiji wombo. Yiji wombo yuna, wombo the jipo koron yobicha.
뭐야 참.
The yiji wombo yuna,
야,
nai wombo yobicha.
정말.
Chamari, I see. Then the Ichi Wombo Yuna, Naya Wombo Mena, Naya Wombo Kabiore. Nupa.
다들 네바 내디로. 내 갈래가 나요 뭐도 그거 좋은 거.
So the initially at the first moment of birth, so the intermediate state ends, and then there's the first. So I asked at the first moment of the taking on of birth, are all 5 sense powers present? And he said the mental sense power is present at that moment, but the other sense powers exist in terms of potential or nupa. Is that correct, Losonla?
right, yes, he did say that, and that they would slowly arise.
Right, they would slowly arise from that nupa. Then a kg tambo, jewa jelen, kg tambo, nai wombo de yomare, yiji wombo kuna, yene nupa yere, then a kale yongore.
어디서?
Okay, so that's it. So they would slowly arise. Then nupa, pakcha dan drapodus. So sapun, gare. So like a seed, or I asked if it was like an imprint or a seed. I said, what is this ability, this nupa? Is it like, and he said, it's like a seed that has potential to give rise to the next, eye sense power, nose sense power, tongue sense power, tactile sense power.
Tuchena, thank you very much.
Anybody else?
Coleman, do you still have a question?
Yeah, actually I do.
Hey, Coleman.
Hey Jeff, good morning guys. Just one quick question. I was just curious about divine intervention. Does Buddhism believe in that, or is like, there's do gods mix with humans like in Greek mythology and stuff like that?
Okay, so let me get this word divine.
Yeah.
Let me understand what that means in order to,
Okay.
what is divine, what is that what is it implying? Just tell
Like,
me
so-
exactly what in your mind happens when divine intervention occurs. And then I
Okay.
can
it might
Yeah.
sound silly, but you know the movie Hercules? You know the movie Hercules?
Okay, go with it. Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So Hercules is part God, part human. I was just curious as to, you know, because I've heard some interesting stories about that in there's like a Tibetan myth how a certain people in Tibet originated from a monkey and a rock dwelling demoness. So it's just like all these like legends out there that I kind of just wanted to throw out there out of curiosity. I don't know, you know, I just want to know your opinion about it.
You don't want to know my opinion about that monkey story. I'm just joking. I'm joking.
I know. I just read it was in the history.
Yeah, yeah.
In the history of Tibet.
That's actually absolutely in scripture. It's around for sure.
Okay. Okay.
The tambo the triwa, hla dan me the chapagare, hla dan me. Nika yemba yurbe. Okay, so gods and humans are mutually exclusive.
Right.
So let's start there. So
Okay.
you're either a god or a human. There is not a common locus between God and human.
Okay.
So obviously we're going to have a big debate, right? The subject Shakyamuni Buddha. You know, why isn't he an example of someone who's a god because he's a Buddha and a human or something
Sure.
like that,
Sure.
right? Or questions like that, you know, occur. But the fact is that gods and humans are mutually exclusive. The conchua the pupi, the rik, the pupi rik, the pupa kabane, biu dan tinju. Yo maribe.
What the logi moshia verda. Pioni over sada na odende shia verda.
Yine the conso, the cheek hla, cheek dinju, and kandre puguje. So I said, well, if one is a god and one is a monkey, how do you create a human?
Yeah.
And he said, well, they slowly they arise. Kali
Yeah.
they slowly
Yeah.
arise. Maybe like so I don't know. He says there's a lot of what Rinpoche says. There's a lot of stories about this. And then I asked, and he said then Rinpoche loju. So he says it's real.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Because I was just really fascinated. I read this book called The History of Tibet, and it was definitely one of my favorite books. Yeah. And it said that's why I asked the question, because they talked about that. They brought that up, and the Dalai Lama was like, "I'm Buddhist, and I do believe in a specific part of Tibet that this legend actually occurred." So I'm like, wow. So, you know, I just wanted to, you know, bring that up because I thought it was really, really fascinating. So yeah, thanks for the answer.
The Rinpoche, the hla, dan dendrum is on shot tudu. I don't know. I don't know how an animal and a god can have intercourse. That's what I just asked him.
I don't know.
I asked him. I did.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe.
I know.
I don't.
Maybe.
Come. Akare. Yo maribe. Nyamdu. Come nyamdu. Chagdu. Dendru ha tontudu. The key, the hla lena key, the key kashe, the hla tontudu. Okay. I was asking if there are different realms and can the animals see the gods? I was just asking these questions I have racing in my mind.
Yeah.
You know? Like, can the dog see a god if a god is here? And he said that the dogs could.
Yeah. Okay.
Nejur. Oh, Nejung. He's giving the example of Nejung. Where the
I've heard that.
Becomes the oracle takes on the body. Then the tanda the kon mayan lion. Nejong. Nejong, the Dana. What's the name for this when he starts that? The Nejong starts that.
Fa Baba. You just
It's
said.
Sa Paba.
Fa Baba.
Say it again.
Just when the Hla Pup. Pup. Hla Nejung Hla Pup. You do the Hla Yanarebe. Me Yanarebe.
The Nejong La Pana. Hong Lion May.
하루.
Client. May cover Chinson. Shison.
내가 매 가비를
So at that
Stops
time,
being a person.
the person is pushed aside, and it's a god at that moment when the Nejung oracle takes on. There's a name for that. What am I trying to say here? When he
What is the
turns into
possession? Not possession. That's not the right word.
yeah, but why not, right?
It's similar.
not?
I forgot.
Why wouldn't it be though? Wouldn't that be exactly what happens?
Well,
when
there's another word for it in English that's doesn't have the negative connotation of
right.
Channel.
Embodies.
It's like when a god takes over a person's, body.
Channeling.
Channel, yeah, something like that. That sounds good. Channel.
So then let's turn it into stuff we know about. So what happens during the Heart Sutra? Is Shariputra pushed aside and Chenrezig pushed aside?
But that's just the blessing of the Buddha. So
Right.
it's not like the consciousness of the Buddha enters the
But-
body of Shariputra. It's
But
not said that
Shariputra
way.
has no control. Shariputra has no
Oh.
control at that moment.
I don't know if would be.
I know. I don't either.
I mean, they're talked about in different terms. So-
Rinpoche, they chiwa yure. Then the nejong, the va palu. Then the jago pombi richuchen, the shirab nimpo. Shariputra yu me. Chenrezig yu me. Khensur Sanjay Shachatupa Yemba Mayemba. Shariputra Chuchen. Shachatupa Yemba Tel. Kon Ransen Mayembe Chair. Charpamajong. He says it's not necessarily so if you've been taken over and don't have control over what you're saying, that you have been possessed or taken over in the same way that the Nejung oracle does a being. So he's saying, then the Nejong, the Ha Pa, then Chenrezig, dan Shariputra, the Trewa dan Lenja, Chipa Yomare. Okay, it's not the same. We'll table that. But interesting, right? Like, because we believe that that's a spoken word of the Buddha, because it's been blessed by the Buddha, and the Buddha blessed Shariputra and Chenrezig's minds and made them not independent anymore and say what the Buddha wanted him to say. So it's interesting, right? Like, what's that line between?
Well, I've never heard anyone say that it makes them not independent, but I mean,
I
that
have.
would be another question, right? Okay. Yeah.
The Chenrezig dan Shariputra Chewa dan Lenja Ransen Sanjay Zusong Kagi. Shariputra dan Chenrezig the Chewa dan the Sanjay Shela. Then that's who this Sanjay Ka Yimba. Then this Sanjay Ka Yimba Chenrezig dan Shariputra Kabi are. Then the Khensur the La Ransen Sanjay Zusong Ransen Yimba Mayemba Shariputra dan Chenrezig Ransen Yomare. They are not in Ransen Yomare. I knew I'd been told that. So they had no control, Shariputra and Chenrezig at that time, over that discussion they were having. That's how we say it's the Buddha's speech. Like if they were throwing some stuff in here and there, we could never say that was the Buddha's speech. Look how this took a left turn, huh? You know, it's so interesting when you start to delve into philosophy and start to look at what the implications are, right? When we believe one thing, then what does it mean for other things? And how does the thing that looks similar how is it really differentiated, right? Like, I don't know because I'm not a scholar. Like, how can you say that there isn't possession? And I've actually heard an American teacher use a word, possession. I've heard him talk about it like the marionette. What is that? Marionette? Like that he was, doing this whole thing and making it all happen. So it's just interesting. We don't need to go any further than that, but thank you so much, Lobsang La. I appreciate you so much. Next question.
So Terry wrote in a question, and then we have questions from Stasha and Alessandra.
Okay.
And Terry writes, so this is referring to Stasha's question earlier. He writes, so the mental sense powers that link up to a person's sense faculties exist but are inactive if a being is reborn as a single-celled animal or something without eyes, ears, etc.
Then the sentient kashe nik yomare na yomare the kashe, the single cell organism. Then konso wombo kabiare nupa kangisena ichi wombo yure konna kashe.
Oh, yeah.
Then the konso the wombo jenda kabiare. Yeah, so they abide. So the single cell amoeba, in that case, if we're positing that they are a sentient being, I'm not questioning whether they are or not. I'm just saying if we posit something as a sentient being, but does not have eyes or ears or nose, those powers still abide, but in the as potential. The conditions aren't the causes and conditions aren't there in order for those to arise for that being. The karma hasn't completed them in a way, like they're an animal, if we think that, it hasn't completed them in a way that potential, the conditions and causes weren't there for the full completion of those other powers to exist. So when they then take on, they pass from that potentially, right? And they in intermediate state, maybe that next birth will be a being with those present. The bardula, the jewa de nga the wombo nupa kona, the nga ichi wombo kona yona. Then the bardo drona, then the bardo the me jewa, the wombo kanga irube. Okay, so if then in the intermediate state I'm going to become a human, because some karmas and causes and conditions at my time of death have propelled me into that intermediate state kind of being, then my sense powers, the potential arises because the power for them to arise is the condition that allows for their arisal to arise arises. Then the bardo, me bardo, ni I wambo she kanga yurbe. Okay. Nupa yurbe. You. Okay, they really have it. Okay, so I asked if it's just the potential. He said they really have it in the intermediate state, these sense powers. If they have the causes and conditions to produce those sense powers, right, for that life, they have that karma to have all those things. So we even see in this human existence that everyone doesn't have the karma to have all of those working consciousnesses, right? Some people don't taste, some people are colorblind, some people can't see at all, some people have no sense of smell. So we see real life examples of those being kind of dormant, if you will. Maybe that's a word you could use. And dormant existing in terms of only a potential to arise. Next question.
Okay, Stasha, Alessandra, and then Coleman again.
Chichena, thank you. It's just a quick follow-up from before. So if we use analyzing a chariot to analyze phenomena and how it exists and arises, and we use that to also analyze the self and consciousness and how it arises and exists or not truly established, then at what point does the chariot arise? Because if it doesn't exist while you're building it, does it begin to exist when you imagine it or try to invent it in your mind? Does it exist as an idea first?
Stasha, the Shinta Kolo, Chiwa. The Shinta Kolo, the Don, the Dagdu. Then Kon Chiwa, the Shinta Kolo, Gadu Jiglu. The Zukan, the Shinta Kolo, Nge Zugure, Sanlo, Shinta Kolo, Yume. So when he's thinking of making this Shinto, the chariot, this idea is not a chariot yet. So the Shinto Kolo, Gadu, the Yenla Kanga Jisa, Mingda. So as soon as all of the parts are together, the moment it's named, it's a Shinto Kolo, it's a chariot. So as soon as all of these parts come together, now what if it's missing like the plastic cap for the air tire? That's part of all. Anyway, so the Shinta Kolo, the Yenla Kanga Sona Shana, then the Shinta Kolo you Ming Daken Mena, Shinta Kolo Yona Mena. Yeah. So without, even once the parts are together without a namer, there's a Shinta Kolo, Rinpoche said. Without someone there to name it. Once it's all together, there's a chariot. And that's what it makes sense, because then it's an object of valid cognition that someone can go, there's a chariot, right? You'd need all the things to be there in order for someone, you'd need a chariot there for someone to go, there's a chariot. But there's no chariot, you know? Next. That was really, really helpful, that, by the way. For me, thank you for that question.
Go ahead, Alessandra.
So thank you. I actually was wondering if I should even ask the question, because you did such a wonderful job answering it. It was kind of a question related to Coleman's question. Because my first thought was, as far as Buddhism goes, do gods necessarily need to have intercourse to create something? Because when I think about, like in Hinduism, what I know about Hinduism, for instance, Shiva and Parvati were consorts, and while Shiva was away at war, Parvati created their son Ganesh out of clay and breathed life into him out of her love for her husband who was not there, or her consort who was not there. And then Hanuman and Rama.
I tell my husband that too.
I'm sorry?
I was a joke. It was a bad joke. I said I would tell my husband that too.
Yeah. So the question is more, because I kind of understand it from a perspective of like Hinduism and some other religions, but as far as Buddhism, with Buddhism, the question would be more, do gods, because God and Buddhism is kind of a, I don't know, there's seems to be a disconnect from me, but that's me. So I'm trying to understand in Buddhist, what is the understanding of how they breathe life into something? Like for a tree, you're giving life to a tree, but you don't have intercourse with it. You know what I mean? That
a tree isn't sentient. A tree is not sentient. So in Buddhism, a tree is not a living being. But so the gods realm in Buddhism is a realm where the utmost happiness can occur, where, you know, in terms of samsara, the peak of happiness and so forth, the highest blisses that you can get samsaric wise are the gods realm. It takes the most amount of virtue to be a god. It takes the highest degree of virtue to be a god and to sustain as a god. And that's why the gods really don't have some of the coarse sufferings that we do. It's a very, very blissful. And according to Buddhism, why many practitioners have mistaken the gods realm for enlightenment, have achieved a state of a god's realm or a form or formless realm meditation, and have mistaken that state for an actual nirvana or a cessation or a nirvana with remainder or without remainder, abiding or not abiding. It's been mistaken over time, according to Buddhism. So according to Buddhism, a God's realm is just a realm just like we're in, but it's not plagued with the same kind of sufferings we have. It's celestial. It's like all of the things you would imagine, a celestial palaces and wonderful everything. And according to Buddhism, according to the scriptures, the gods don't really suffer or have any nasty effects until they're about to die. And then all the flowers they have on them all around them start to wilt, and they actually, for the first time, start to have an odor. And all the other gods get the heck away from them because they are abiding. They want loveliness all the time. They don't want anything to do with that. So their realm, and you could even say karmically, they're just pushed away from them because that's something that's, grotesque to a god. So it's almost like karmically they're pushed away from their pack, if you will, of gods.
Okay.
And it's taken so much virtue to sustain that lifetime. Usually it will cause that being to go to the lower realms because of the fear and disgust that happens at the time of death for a god, because they've been so used to pleasant. Now all of a sudden it smells and all of a sudden they're dying. Because of the reaction to that and the amount of sustained virtue it took to keep them there, it generally creates a lower realm rebirth. So that's just an explanation of the gods, kind of just an outer understanding of what Buddhism says gods are. Now, some of the deities that we find in Hinduism, Buddhism asserts are emanations of Buddhas. So there are stories where we find that as well. So everything isn't what it seems and never is, So
Yeah.
when I made that joke before, that was just me being
No,
Jeff. We all know
yeah.
very well by now.
Yeah.
But Rinpoche,
And Jeff, I understand that, but I also know that a lot of people out there listening do think like that. So that's why I wanted to just kind of jump in on it where I could.
Rinpoche, the Hindu Chu, the Hla, the Shiva, Yayo, was it Shiva that went to war, or
Shiva went to war and
Shiva the Hla Chinsun? Then they did Ransen, Kongi Yayo, Pugu Jason, Yine Mizan Sha Mason, Shela Dandrapudu. Then they Hla, Pugu J Guna, Mizan Sha Gu. Yeah, he doesn't know if they need to have intercourse to have a baby in the God's realm.
Thank you.
Is there a better word I could have used, Lobsang? I think he understood.
I don't, yeah, I mean, for intercourse?
Mizansha.
Mitsangsha, well, yeah, I mean, there's other words, but just pomodroa, you can say. Just pomodroa. Pomodroa. Lude. That's a lude jigiribis. You could ask like that. But I think he understood what you're saying.
I did too.
Just saying it, yeah.
And Jeff, I think maybe a better example would be from Hinduism, again, Rama and Hanuman. Hanuman was a monkey who was so dedicated to Rama, and Rama was searching for his consort who had been kidnapped. And in Hanuman as a monkey's dedication and love for Rama and help to find Sita, he was blessed with human form through that. So he was a sentient being that wasn't human originally, but was then blessed with it. But he didn't have sex with him. So
yeah, Buddhism would find that untenable, that you could bless and turn someone, because right, Buddha then would just, if that was possible, turn us all into Buddhas out of love and compassion. But let me see.
No, because it was earned. It was earned.
I see.
Through his merits and virtue as a monkey and his service.
The Hindu Chu, the Loju de Yure, the Biyu Yure, then BU, the Tepa Chembo, then Shamba Chembo Yure, the Lama. Then the Lama con Shela Jason, then con Meije son. The Meije Shela, the Shela Jana, Genju Meidro Tudu. Say this. No, so in Buddhism, we don't have the ability within this lifetime to be turned into another realm being. We would have to die. And then now we could say that through the power of a blessing, we could be propelled into a special realm. Buddhism would be fine with that through dependent origination, but would say that the realms are separate and my continuum is a human continuum. And in order for me to take a God's continuum on or an animal's continuum on, I would have to die, and then I would then have to have an animal's aggregates or a God's aggregates manifest. So we couldn't manifest without a death. But there could have been a subtle death that took place. But then if there's a death that takes place, there's aging that also has to take place. So if there's a birth, then you couldn't have maybe, according to Buddhism, a consort that's a day old. So you would have to then say, how did aging stop taking place? If then there was a death and a birth, and then at what age would it have needed to be tenable? Because a baby cannot be a consort. So this is the logic that's how Buddhism starts to kind of unwind. Well, if you say this, well, then how is that tenable? Well, then if there's separate realms, then how did the aggregates change? So without a death, without a shucking off of the human aggregates, how did a God's aggregates or a monkey's aggregates, if you will, because they're separate realms and we never can be both, according to Buddhism, where our karma makes us a human, then we die, our karma makes us a God, then we die, our karma makes us a hell being, then we die, and our karma, and that's cyclic existence, just going through that cycle over and over and over and over and over again. That we've all been gods and we've all been animals and we've all been hell beings, according to Buddhism. And that cycle can only stop if we know why we're being thrown into these states of being, why we're birth, aging, sickness, death, birth, aging, sickness, death. And we even see that when we give that example of the God with the wilting and so forth, where that sickness kind of almost takes place at the end. Not all beings have sickness. I get that. We have formless in form, but we really can and look at what sickness maybe is at a subtle level when the disintegration gets to the point of that lifespan that it's just about to end. You could almost say that being's is sick, because it's just about to die. So just about to be thrown into another basis of aggregates. And that's the pervasive compounded suffering that Buddhism posits and says that we're hell, hungry ghosts, humans, hell, hungry ghosts, animals, humans, demigods, and gods over and over again. And we're thrown into these states of being beyond our control. We're born and then we die, and then we're born and then we die, and we don't have any control over this. And that's the pervasive compounded suffering. We're forced into these states of being. So knowing that karma forces you into those aggregates, and then you're born and you go through the progression. There isn't any way to stop cause and effect. This minute, will cause, you need the first minute to get to the second minute. Buddhism never unravels cause and effect. It's always cause and effect, always with Buddhism. So you would say, in order for a monkey to become a human, the monkey has to die, has to go through an intermediate state as a human, or at some point, at the end of it at least, have an intermediate state human, and then be thrown into a human womb. Now, there could be a miraculous birth, so it could be instantaneous. I wonder if Padmasambhava, how old he was when he was born. That'd be a good question, right? Because so for a miraculous birth, do you have to be 1 year old? Maybe not. Rinpoche, the metu jewa je, bunga jewa, metu jewa, the sapo, dang the trogo, I forgot the womb. Then the lobung, the metu jewa, Lo nishu je tudu. Lo tambo jebu.
그만 좀 내가 돌을 집어서.
The lopum pemu yune. The metu jason kon pugu. Kon lo nishu sonju. Metu jewa. The ngatsu je dan drapu du. Donda chi, donda ni, lo son. Okay, so he said that it does still. I was asking if miraculous birth, you could start at 20, or if, because then, right? Then you can start to. I'm never against a different philosophy. I just have to be able to see if it holds up. Does it hold up or not? So you could start to see there could be he could die at the instant Bardo could finish, miraculous birth, and then miraculous birth, I'm thinking maybe you don't have to be a baby. I don't know. I wasn't there.
Yeah.
So anyway, these are things that we can all think about as Buddhists. We should never close our minds. And in closing our mind is actually a fault that will allow us not to see emptiness.
Thank you so much.
Coleman, do you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up what I was saying before. I remembered the name that I read the Dalai Lama say. He said La Trug. I guess that's Tibetan for someone. I don't know. Maybe I should just ask Rinpoche what La Trug means.
La Trug.
La Trug, I think. La Trug.
La Trug. Rinpoche. La Trug. Donagare. La Trug.
Did I get it wrong? I don't know.
Coleman. La Trug. Yeah, not. We had the Tibetan word. I could, you know what I mean? If we had the word in Tibetan,
Yeah.
Is that ring a bell?
It's like, it was just about, I was reading again about what the Dalai Lama said about how there was some really I don't know. It doesn't really matter. I was just curious as to whether that was a correct posit to a certain, or if that was a correct word for what I was thinking of, with divine intervention and all that stuff. But
Right.
yeah, it doesn't matter. No worries.
And then there's the last question is Padmasambhava already a Buddha? So then just emanate whatever. You're good.
Yeah.
Emanate a bridge. I think you can emanate a 20-year-old.
Oh, well, this is kind of an interesting question. Right?
We're using that example.
How we were talking about how, I have spontaneous birth. I was just thinking that up in heaven, do they have parents? When you're born in heaven, do you have parents, or are you just there spontaneously?
In God's realm, you mean?
Yeah.
Rinpoche. Pla, Pugo, Pama, Yurube. Yes, they have parents.
Oh, for real? Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So gods of the form and formless realm are born from a flower, Rinpoche said. Zume, Zudan Zume. Zuyomar. So not the form realm is born from a Zume Kam Metu Yomar, Zuyomar. Then the Jewa Gare. So the mental consciousness of birth is what the formless realm, but the form Zukam Metu Jewa. The form realm, we find the birth from a flower.
Regular, you mean heaven? Okay.
When you say heaven, we have God's realms.
Yeah.
Then we call it a heaven. They live in a heaven, but it's not a place like we have in the Christian tradition. That's a place like heaven where they all hang out. There's many, many, many heavens in where gods abide in Buddhism.
Wow. Yeah, I've kind of been getting that point lately. It's interesting. Okay, well, yeah, cool, interesting stuff.
Lopu inye ngama sanje yemba rinpoche. The sewa the metu jewa the jewa de kon sanje jason. No, Pemanyune. I'm sorry, Pemanyune. Pema Nyune, the Metu Jewa Kon Sanje Yen.
이제 말이야.
Answer. I asked if
얼마 전에 소식이죠.
Lama. Thanks. The Metu Nyune, the Metu Jewa, the Sanje Trupa. Kon Trupa Yen. Mayan. Mayan, Yene Trupa, the Pema Nyune, the Metu Jewa. Then due to the Kon Sanje Trupa.
이제 말이야.
Okay, so I was asking if when Padmasambhava was born from the flower, if he was already a Buddha emanating.
Voice.
And he said, Rinpoche said no.
Oh, really? Wow.
Pema
Wow,
Nyune,
learning lots today. Learning lots today.
Pema Nyune did say Chanchu Jezon. Lama.
근데 초배마스. 손놈을 둘 집에
Lesso. Then due to the Kon Sanje Yen.
이제
Okay, so scratch that. I asked when he was born from the flower at that time, if he was a Buddha, and yes, he's a Buddha.
Ah, okay. Okay.
Lobsang has a question.
Sorry, I did want to just comment too. One of the first questions Coleman asked about the history of human evolution in Tibet, and just like, as you know, having taken actual history of Tibet courses in a Tibetan college, higher education institute, you know, they kind of use the modern theory of Darwinian evolution to lend support to that the historical take in the traditional Tibetan literature. So maybe just like, I know when we translate as like, you know, an ape and a rock ogress or whatever, you know, words it's translated that, it sounds absurd, but I think the idea behind it is really more like, you know, pre Homo sapien kind of, you know, human-like beings. And so that the Tibetans themselves see it as very much in line with how the evolution of Homo sapiens is looked at from the you know, natural history and evolutionary science perspective. Just so you know.
No,
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I totally agree with that.
And of course, we also do keep finding, I mean, just last week or 2 weeks ago, a new, you know, pre-human species was discovered, actually in China, I believe, right? So, you know, there is still, the story is certainly not complete in terms of the Western take on it, but.
It's tough too, Eastern wise. It's like, at what point, like you can't say a human is caused by an animal unless it's karma.
Yeah,
so
you probably could.
You have human.
You probably could, but in terms of evolution, for sure, yeah. Because again, you can't like, well, yeah, no, I mean, it's tricky. I guess it's one of those things where it's like, define the exact moment in evolution when something changed species is not easy. I'm not sure how to answer that.
We could say that there were humans who look exactly like us on planet Pluto. We just don't know. And some conditions happened where we can be born on Earth as a human there. It's like we're so attached to our Earth being the only like human place, and it had to come from the monkeys because that's all we have. That's all we can see here. But I just putting it out there. I don't hold one way or another, but my mind, when I don't hold one way or another, just does this, you know, until it can stop. And I think like why do we need, and then so one day somebody's throwing karma, right? Throws them into a human realm. That had nothing to do with the fact that 10 years or 100 years before, there was a monkey that was closer to a human. Like, how could those causes be concordant in any way whatsoever? How can we find concordance?
Yeah, I mean, you need to have the conditions of having a parent in a, that have the potential, the capacity to give birth to a human body for a human birth to take place. So after the, this eon or period of time of the abiding of our earth is over and it goes into destruction of this, whatever you call the universe, earth, planet, whichever way you look at it, the world obviously will be destroyed at some point. So then, and then the whole universe, as we know it, so there won't be any humans being born in this universe, at least, right? So then the karma has to just wait.
Right.
Or
Right.
find another universe where there are humans, but it may just have to wait and be in another realm until then, like the formless realm or something.
We would have to say that our karma is somehow shaping a progression of a species for us to later be born as it.
Well, that is how His Holiness describes it usually. Our own karma did contribute to the very formation of our world. Yeah.
Huh. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I appreciate this discussion immensely, because that makes us have to look at a book, right, and think when we're not sure about something. I know that's what makes it happen for me. So I appreciate these discussions a lot. Let's unless there's more hands up. Coleman, do you have your hand up?
No, my bad. I just wanted to recommend maybe the history of Tibet to anyone who's interested. But other than that, my hand was up accidentally. All right.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
It's so fascinating, Jeff, about how Samsung Gampo, Sarong Gampo, right?
Yeah, Chenrezig emanation.
Yeah, he wanted to start the Tibetan Empire. It had to do with the Mongolians, how heavily they influenced Tibetan Buddhism and how they protected them. It was just a wild, incredible book with the dialogue between the Dalai Lama and I can't remember the author's name, but he was American from Nepal. And honestly, it was one of the most informative books about Tibet. It was beautifully written.
Then Sun Sen Gampo, the Loju Kanga Yure, then Sun Sen Gampo, the Sopa Ropa Cheson. Then Sopa, the Bu Chu, the Pi Nampi Chu, the Drawa Yure. Then the Sopa, the Mambo Trison, the Dupa, Mambo Trison, Nampi Chu. Sun Sen Gampo, Du Tzu.
And Princess Wencheg, Jeff, how she was married to it was a Nepalese princess, I think, and a Chinese princess, Princess Wencheg, and she was very highly praised for bringing a Tibetan or a Buddha, a statue of the Buddha to Tibet. So, yeah, sorry for rambling, but it's a fantastic book. Fantastic book. I've read it a couple of times. So I just recommend that. I got it at Barnes and Noble if anyone was interested in it. That's all.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool.
That is not my forte. History of Buddhism, not my forte. History of Tibet, not my forte. I don't know. I've just never in school. I've just, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
When I hear about it, I see the relevance. And when you, like Lobsang was speaking of, when you start to study Prajnaparamita, in the beginning of it, it goes through the different kinds of teachings. And you start to see how Buddhism was formed all over the world, because you see the history behind the various teachings and how they were given and the kind of emphases of those teachings.
Yeah, it was so cool. They called Padmasambhava into Tibet as a spiritual warrior, to convert the ones from Bon to protectors of the Buddhist religion, and how Guru Padmasambhava was so magical that he didn't die or whatever. He flew away with his Tibetan consort. It was just a great read all around. So
he used to dance in the sky all around Tibet.
Yeah, he was like this magician. It was like this warrior magician, if you can call it something. That's the closest thing I can think of.
A drunk warrior magician.
So Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All
All right.
right.
Well, thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you very much. All right, so yeah, without Padmasambhava, if we look at historically, we wouldn't be here with Tibetan Buddhism. If we look at, what was done and subdued and the teachings that were brought, and then the monasteries that were formed, Padmasambhava's kindness allows us to be able to study today. Whether you believe the miraculous parts of the story or not, you can historically find how much influence Padmasambhava had in converting the Buddhism, making the Buddhism that we study today what it is. Let's just say it like that. Okay. My first refuge lamas were actually from the Padmasambhava Center. They were Nyingma lamas. That was my first introduction to Buddhism.
Sasha has a question, and also Karen wants to know, Coleman, what is the name of that book? If you could write it in chat, and if you can't write it in chat, just let us know.
Hold on. I'm going to look it up right now, and then I'll tell you.
Stasha, and then we'll do prayers.
Okay, I'm sorry, real quick, just in this topic, could you say that humans are evolving into Buddhas?
How do you say evolve?
Well, similar to the way that, I mean, if the explanation tends to lean towards monkeys evolving into humans, and you're going from an animal realm to a human realm, but we as humans are going from a human realm to a Buddha realm. Is that similar?
Rinpoche, ngatsu Gemma, ngatsu Kanga Sanje Yongre, Gemma, Yongare.
Yeah.
Then the coin tree was the Senripa Kale, the Ngama, the Biu, and Kale May Yong. The Arila, the Senripa, the Yure, Changama, the Tonson, the Kale, the Tambo, the Lapa, Kambaja, then Kale Long, then Gamba Nire, then a Mayor, Senripa, the Kale. Then Nambi Chu, the Natsu, Kale, Sanjay, Drogore, K Langudu, Drapudu. He said maybe, yeah, similar. But the way I said it to him is this. I said that science says that we, in terms of evolution, there were beings that were walking on fours, and then slowly, not using their hands and standing up more and more, and eventually they were human, or Homo sapien, right? That's the word, human. Can we say that there's a similar process where we're slowly becoming Buddhas? So I asked him like that. He said, yeah, sure. So in terms of yes, all sentient beings will become enlightened. So everyone will become Buddhas. So if you look at it as a destination, in terms of that, we're shucking off bodies over and over and over again until we figure out why we're shucking off bodies over and over again. And we figure out that everyone's shucking off bodies over and over again, and how sad that is. We have compassion for them, and then realize the only way we can not shuck off bodies over and over again, and the only way we can help others to not shuck off bodies over and over again, is to become Buddhas. And then we start to change kind of that process and make it so the gap is less between us, the gap is less. We'll eventually become a Buddha, and that shucking off of bodies and so forth. So yeah, we're all become Buddhas. So we're heading towards that, but yeah, you could say evolving too. Why not? You have to get rid of these obstructions to omniscience and afflictive obstructions through these series of lifetimes. So there's an evolution of purification taking place. It's happening in a forward motion. It's not going backwards. So if you look at it in terms of a chart, right? I mean, we're standing up. I don't know if that holds, by the way, you know, like with a Geshe, but I think we all know what I mean. All right.
Oh, Jeff, the book.
Oh, the book.
Okay, so you can get it on Amazon. You can hear me, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, cool. So go to Amazon.com, and it's Thomas Laird, Thomas Thomas Laird, Laird, and it's called The Story of Tibet: Conversations with the Dalai Lama. Hardcover is $14.44.
A bargain.
Definitely, yeah, definitely my favorite. Yeah, my favorite book. So, you know, if anyone wants to read it, it's on Amazon.
There you go.
Thomas Laird, The Story of Tibet: Conversations with the Dalai Lama. There you go.
Right on.
All right.
The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losang Drakpa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the 3 times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness, all-powerful Avalokiteshvara, Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara's end. I pray for the long life of the precious Khensur Wandak, upholder of scriptural and realizational doctrines, the spiritual friend who trained extensively in the 5 great philosophical texts with exceptional wisdom and perseverance. Suji Rinpoche, Gutsi Shapi Denana. Rinpoche, de nga nge pama jewa, nge paba dan ama jewa, de nge le chen gu. I asked him if, in order for my parents to be born, if they need the condition of my karma there. And he said no. So anyway, that relates in my mind. I don't want to go into it, but so thank you, everybody.